Are you looking to start working out again, but confused about all the options out there? Stick around. We might have something for you. Hey, I'm Mike,
And I'm Twing.
and welcome to another episode of 40 Plus Fit, the podcast that goes beyond the fads and delves into the science behind sustainable weight loss and fitness for the 40 plus crowd, where we bring expert insights on exercise, nutrition, and healthy habits, empowering you to make informed choices and create a personalized plan for success. Because after all, life after 40 is just getting started. All good, Twin?
Yes, all good. And you all can't see this right now, but I'm just trying to take a picture of us on the Zoom just because I want to post it on Insta. I always forget to take a picture and you know, and use it to inform people of the fact that we have this podcast.
But you should have warned me so that I could have brushed my hair.
The thing you should do is you should change the lighting because you are just shining at the moment.
I tell you, that is
You're
what
not
I'm
getting
at.
enough sun. You're just not getting enough sun, man.
It's just,
Yeah.
I'm beaming to get going here. That's why.
Because why? What's our topic today?
Today, well, we're talking about helping people to find the right workout for them to whatever their goals may be. So I thought maybe we can start out the conversation with what are the most, for those that don't know that are listening to this for the first time, is Twain is an actual coaches people for a living for the past 15 years. I think is about right.
Yeah,
Been
this is
coaching.
this is the fifth, I believe this is the 15 or 16th period. Probably,
Right.
yeah, 15 and a half maybe at this point.
And he's been coaching people through fitness, through losing weight, through basically getting in a healthier lifestyle, as we say, for the past 15 years. So he's got a wealth of experience that he can share here with us today uh, when trying to find and select the correct workout. So I thought we'd start with the very first question is what are the most common challenges that you've found that people are over the age of 40 usually face when getting back into fitness?
Oh, that's a great question, man. I think I think the biggest challenge that they face is literally the topic of our conversation today, which is like finding the workout that they need to do for where they are currently at. And the other thing about or the thing about that is because a lot of times the people that I talk to, many of them have done some sort of workout in the past, or many of them are actually were really active when they were younger. So a lot
Mm.
of people I talk to, they are coming to us for help, are maybe mid-30s, on the younger end, but a lot of them are around that 40 to 50s range. And so a lot of times in their 20s, they were doing all sorts of workouts. And some of the guys, they're like always going to the gym, right? Doing traditional bodybuilding stuff, Arnold magazine stuff, whatever. A lot of the ladies, they were like maybe athletes in their own right. They were doing all sorts of different sports, touch rugby, netball, things like this. They're doing all their training associated with that. But then now, when they're trying to re-enter into it, they think back to what they did before and try to go jump right in at that level again. And one thing that happens a lot is that because they're no longer as fit as they used to be, they end up either suffering some sort of injury. At worst, maybe, at worst they suffer some sort of injury, which is really bad. But for the most part, people just get burnt out really quick.
Mm.
And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges in navigating this space of trying to figure out what is the workout that I need to do at this point of my life. How do I assess that? And so I think that's what we want to kind of break down, right, for this topic in this
That's right.
podcast.
That's right. One thing I find though is like as a 40 plus person myself, getting back into the workouts
Mm.
after the age is you are usually coming from a far more busy and a stressful lifestyle compared to when you were younger. And so one of the challenges I find for myself is sticking to the workout.
Yes.
And it does fall into what you were saying there is because you're coming from what you used to remember yourself doing, and now you're stepping into this arena again with the
Yeah.
mindset of 20 years ago and trying to perform in the same way that there's a few things like one is you get disappointed when your performance isn't up to par. Two
Yeah.
is, as you pointed out, there's the higher likelihood of injury because you're going from a 0 to like a 10 in
Yeah.
effort uh, when your body has not been doing that for 20 years already. So I find that the drop-off rate is quite high.
Yeah.
for myself included.
Yeah, and the idea there of, having so much more responsibilities, which also kind of translates into, for the most part, just a really, really packed schedule. I think that's a key factor here as well. Just finding the time to actually get in the workouts. And, depending on the workout that you search for, not all the workouts will be able to fit within the kind of time you can allocate towards it. So there's just so many, there's just so much you can find online. And I think we're in this age as well where there's just too much information online and it gets very challenging to navigate it. So I think that's another big challenge there. It's like you have the time issue, and then you have to still spend some time trying to figure out what workout to do.
Yeah.
And then, and then you still have to try it out and see, oh man, does this work for me? Does it not work for me? So hopefully this episode helps you kind of address that.
Hopefully. Would you say it's quite important for because of the stressful lifestyle and all that, that one of the key factors that should come into play when selecting a workout is making sure it's something that you actually enjoy?
Yes, I think at the core of it, adherence is the overarching principle that wraps around everything else. Because if you don't fundamentally enjoy what you're doing to a certain degree, you will never quite sustain it. We won't have enough of the intrinsic drive to sustain it. I think there always needs to be some sort of it's a fine balance between intrinsic and extrinsic motivations, right? You need some sort of external motivation. It could be a goal, a very specific competition date you're working towards, or just like a general goal you set for yourself, whatever it is. But there has to be that general intrinsic aspect to it that keeps you coming back for more. Once you pop, you can't stop kind of deal, right? So
Right.
so we have to find something that we at least has some element of joy in it, and enjoyment to be able to sustain it moving forward. Yeah. And to last long enough, I would say, where potentially then if you last long enough and you do it a lot more often, you get some sort of results, and then that perpetuates further enjoyment, right? Because you see the results, you get motivated, and you develop a passion for the thing that you're doing.
That's true. I suppose it also plays a part as to what type of person are you? Are you a person who loves to do individual exercise, or are you a person who's more likely to enjoy the company of others in group exercise, like maybe playing football, as you said, netball, or doing some kind of fitness class?
Yeah. 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 And this one thing that I think a lot of the people that we train or we talk to, a lot of them, they want to get fit or they want to get healthy, but ultimately they want to return back to some sort of activity that really they were very passionate about, especially in their youth. I have people that used to be, example, like distance runners. They want to get back to distance running again, but they also recognize that, hey, they can't like go back into it because they tried, like your famous 5K a day, they're trying to do a 5 kilometer a day or something, after having not run for a long time.
Yeah.
They try to get back into it, and then they get all these kind of issues. They go to the physio tells them, oh, you get these issues and you strengthen things up. So I think they recognize that, hey, I need to do some sort of strengthening. I need to actually do some sort of preparation and get my body ready to be able to go back into doing the activity at the level that I really enjoy it. Otherwise, they try doing the activity, and then all they can think about, and I understand this part, right? Like all you can think about is how far away you are from where you were at your peak.
Yeah,
And that's super demoralizing because it makes you feel like you're just starting from scratch all the time.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. I can attest to that.
For
But
sure.
moving on from that point, before we actually go into the detailed workouts,
Yep.
what are some general considerations that you would say would play a good part when looking to create a safe and effective exercise program for people that are over the age of 40?
This is a great one. And this actually kind of references our previous episode. I think the one before this, it would be the one on rest and recovery.
Yes.
So when you're choosing a program, you actually want to focus on what we would use, I guess, in a technical term of volume. And volume is basically just how much exercise are you actually doing. You always want to err on the side of maybe a bit lesser than you think you need. And so you can then add on to that rather than going in, full force and doing way more than you actually need. which then ends up with, multiple downsides to it. The worst, not of course, notwithstanding, the worst is that you get injured, right? And that's the thing. So I think when we touched on this in the previous episode as well, so make sure you go and listen to that. For this, which is if you overdo the volume, it creates a lot of tiredness and physical fatigue in your body that it has trouble recovering from, and then that's kind of what leads to injury for most people. It's not often like the exercise or the thing itself. It's just that you did too much, too quick, too soon, and so the system kind of breaks from that. If I were to use some very loose analogy there.
Okay, so the main key consideration you'd say is like for general is don't do too much too soon. Pace yourself.
Don't do too much too soon. Pace yourself.
Okay. Awesome. So I think this is the part that everybody has come here for.
Yeah.
We're gonna break it down into a couple of shall we say personas who are gonna come and speak to Twain and ask for help and see what kind of programs he can set for us to make sure we reach our goals.
Yeah. I mean, we discussed this before we even did this episode, and we were trying to figure out, okay, how can we categorize people, right? So I believe you find these categories should apply to most of you. Any particular one, or even maybe overlap of some of the categories as well. So just kind of listen up, and then if you find that you're not within any of the categories, you have some sort of special background or special situation you're in, feel free to always drop a comment down below, or just reach out to us through the website, right? 40 Plus Fit.
Yeah, 40plusfit.com, FORTY plusfit.com.
Yeah, so just drop us a message there, or drop us a comment in the Spotify comment box. I think there's a comment box now.
Yes, I believe so. We should really look into this and come back with some proper ways. All right, but anyways, let's jump into this. So first up, we have Harry. Harry is coming. His main goal is he needs to improve his health, right? He's now over 40. Maybe his blood test that he just got was not as favorable as what he would have liked. So the doctor's advice was, one of them, go back and just improve on your fitness, get moving, and get healthy. So he's come to you and he's asking now, I just want to get healthy.
Yeah.
What can you recommend?
Yeah. So for somebody that is, and again, assuming that, this is coming from a place of you haven't done any exercise at all, you kind of reached the stage and you want to get healthy. And that's all you want, right? You just want to improve those blood markers. You want to improve the overall health of your body. Getting some sort of balance between a resistance training component and a cardio component is going to be very important. So practically what this would look like would be something like you got to lift weights maybe 2 times a week, and then try to do some sort of cardio maybe 2 times a week, maybe as a start. Yeah, so a very balanced kind of approach where you're focusing on both the cardiovascular development and also the muscular development in that sense, the strength development of the body. Now, what kind of workout should you be doing then? When we talk about resistance training, the easiest one is hitting the gym, right? Doing some workouts, hitting the gym. Usually the split we will give for people that are doing like 2 times a week will be something along the lines of like a full body split. So you try to cover the entire body, do 1 exercise for each body part at each session. And if you do that twice in a week, you probably got yourself covered. And it's quite easy to do that because as long as you are training what we call the basic movement patterns, you are probably good to go. And the basic movement patterns are simple things like, can you squat? Can you deadlift something? Can you push something overhead? Can you can you lie down and push something above you, and then can you pull yourself or up, or can you pull something towards you? So these are all the basic stuff. You add in some core work, a very well-rounded fitness program like this would really work very well. Now, let's say if you don't like the gym, okay, that doesn't mean that all hope is lost. If you're just trying to improve your overall overall health through fitness and looking at the workout component, resistance training can also come in the form of bodyweight exercise. And so you then have that option to do bodyweight exercises, be it at home, be it at the fitness corner near your, where you stay. And a simple pull-up bar will suffice because you can then do pull-ups, you can do body weight squats. You can do single leg squats, eventually progress up to that. You can do push-ups, very, very simple movements that will allow you to, still get a lot of resistance in. And that's really the main thing you're trying to do. You're just trying to challenge the muscles and the tissue structures of the body, because that's what's going to trigger that growth and adaptation response to improve your overall health. Okay, because then your body will become more sensitive to the nutrients you put in. All right, so we're not even talking about like the nutrition component of things. Obviously, if you are towards the higher end of the BMI scale, maybe you're overweight, maybe you have some extra fat, you could lose that as well. But if you're just talking from a workout perspective, this is going to be very, very beneficial. Yeah, so 2 times a week of training would be where you probably want to start. And then the other part to it would be the cardio component, right? So the cardio component, another 2 times in a week. Now, I'm just giving this as a rough start. And the cardio component will be something that you can manage, really. As a starting point, we usually just tell people maybe something like 30 minutes of brisk walking would be a great start. A light jog if you are feeling up for it. Or if you prefer to use a piece of cardio equipment, maybe riding the bike for 30 minutes, using the elliptical machine for 30 minutes, it's also pretty good.
Swimming?
So that's like, I would say, the standard template we can start with.
Right.
Now there are probably a few ways you could go from there. For those of you who are super busy, you might take that and you might split it up into even shorter bouts of exercise. So let's say if I said, 2 times a week, 1 hour of resistance training on each session, and maybe 2 times a week, let's say 1 hour of cardio, right? We could split that up further into maybe something like 4 times a week of doing some cardio, and then 3 times a week of doing, or 4 times a week of doing like 30 minutes. You could start to split it up into the daily kind of activity levels, and just to make it a bit more manageable.
Okay. For cardio, would you also put swimming under that? Or
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think swimming is great, especially if you have existing issues with your knees, and like impact on the knees is a concern at the moment. Swimming is probably a great way to just get some cardio in while reducing that lower body impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have the resistance training, we have the cardio.
Yes.
Initially starting out resistance training twice a week, cardio twice a week.
Yep.
What about exercises like Pilates or yoga? Does that affect this particular group at all?
I think Pilates and yoga. Okay, Pilates and yoga definitely will help. It definitely will help. 100% it will help. For overall health and well-being, right? That's what we're generally talking about. So, and Pilates is not easy by any means when you do it. Okay. For beginners, it will probably be really taxing, or it will feel really taxing, and you might get even some beneficial strength gains from that. But the thing about Pilates is that it reaches this limit point where you probably don't get additional strength or resistance gains from that. You just feel the muscle burning a lot. You just maybe develop a bit more muscular endurance, things like this. But it's not really challenging the muscles in that sense. So, in the truer sense of like progressive overload, so to speak. So I think Pilates as a complement to other resistance work is a fantastic option. But even just doing on its own, if you're just starting out and you're a complete beginner, like we talked about, even 2 times a week of Pilates will probably be good. But at some point, after you start to feel better, you can move better, you probably want to challenge your body a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. And then yoga, speaking of yoga, sorry, the other one, it kind of falls in the same category, but it's also kind of different. Like yoga, there are multiple types as well, right? So I'm not too sure of all the different subcategories, but I know there are those that are really tough, like power yoga, or they're intended to be like a workout in and of itself. My recommendation has always been, if you're going to use the tool, you probably want to use the most optimized version of that tool rather than a combined or maybe a Frankenstein version of it. And what I mean by that is, let's say yoga, the idea of that is to promote a bit more calmness, flexibility, to kind of center and focus yourself, correct? That's my understanding of what the initial purpose of yoga is. That's why you do all the different asanas, you flow from thing to thing, and then like position to position, and then you develop that very nice calm flow to it, and then you end off the session in that corpse pose, right? Like I've done a few yoga classes, so I always enjoy that last part. You feel so calm after that, and I almost like always fall asleep towards the end there. So the idea is it's actually to promote, I would say, a lot more of that recovery aspect, upregulation of your parasympathetic nervous system. So I think that is where it comes in from a wellness and mental health perspective, right? It gives you that space to just kind of calm yourself down, focus and become like mindful. In that sense, it's a movement meditation, if you will. And so I would say if you're going to do yoga, I would probably do it for that. I wouldn't do yoga to get in a workout. And I'm talking about all these things just from that utilitarian perspective of like you want to do the thing and get the maximum effect from that tool. Like I wouldn't use a screwdriver to hammer a nail. I'll use a screwdriver to screw in a screw.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from here. So let's say if you're interested in overall health and well-being, I could see a program where you do 1 day yoga, 1 day Pilates, 1 day with weights, and then maybe in between the rest of the days you do some sort of cardio. I think that's like a fantastic balanced way to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that you get to the end of the yoga session, you feel like you want to sleep. I was the same with a Pilates session, but instead of sleep, it was more like pass out. Because I can attest to the fact that it is not an easy workout when you're starting out and beginning.
Yeah. It's definitely not. Like even for myself, I'm so used to weight training and stuff. If I go and do a Pilates reformer class, so I've tried out one Pilates reformer class. It's not easy because a lot of it is like you kind of use your body weight and then they have some of the springs and the bands and things like this, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is you're going by time and duration. So you have to hold positions and you're definitely going to build up lactic acid, build up in the muscles. You're going to feel that tiredness. But the question is the tiredness translating to like what is the tiredness actually translating towards? And so a lot of times people get that misconception that, oh, if I do the thing and I'm super tired out by it, I'm actually I'm getting a lot of benefit. But you're only getting the benefit of the thing that is intended for. And what I mean by that is simply like I could go and run, 10 kilometers right now, and I'll be tired out by it, right? But the reason why I'm going to be pretty tired by it is because I'm not practiced in running at the moment. So let's say if I do a lot of Pilates and I do it on a more regular basis, I would become a lot more practiced at it. And then my base of, let's say, muscular strength and stuff would allow me to handle the workouts way better. To a point where suddenly after I acclimatize, it will become much, much easier. And then I won't be getting any real benefit from it beyond a certain point. And that's why, like, it's important to understand how to make those differentials and those distinctions, because you sometimes I think you might see like a lot of those Instagram reels or maybe even videos where I've seen some of these before where they take like all these big guys or these like maybe more muscular athletes, right? Like say rugby players, and then they put them into like a women's Pilates class. And I guess this is just to push a certain narrative of, oh, look, like, this is difficult, this is tough. But the fact is, these are not things that these people can generally train. So if you put somebody in something completely novel and new for the first time, they're going to suck at it. 100%. It's going to suck, right? And then, yeah, and so it's going to be tough. And notwithstanding the fact that a lot of it's body weight. So a lot of times the people that are like, they're bigger, like I'm referencing this video that I saw, right? So the people that are bigger coming in, they're heavier as well. So you're holding a lot more weight, and you're doing all this body weight stuff. So when you really think about it, it doesn't really prove anything. It just tells you that, okay, trying something new is the same for everybody. Right? It just generally is tough the first time you try it. But that's not to discredit Pilates or anything, like each of these things have their purpose.
Well, I find that Pilates, what I like to use it for is for core strength. Because I get quite bored going and just doing sit-up after sit-up after sit-up. So you can use this as a variation to improve on your core.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah, is it a whole thing on itself? I find that after a while, you're not as challenged anymore. Where I'm still very challenged in those kind of things is the flexibility part, because I'm not flexible at all. I'm about as flexible as a pencil.
Yeah, and that's one part that you want, like, you could do more of that if that's the thing you're trying to improve, right? Yeah.
Okay, so for people looking to get healthy, we're looking at doing resistance training, probably at least twice a week, and then supplementing that, well, not supplementing, but alternating that with cardio workouts.
Words, Mike, use your words.
Sorry, I did a leg workout this morning, so my brain oxygen level is not so brilliant at the moment. So yeah, so alternating that with cardio workouts so that you get a vascular workout as well.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Let's move to the next one. We have Lucy. Lucy has packed on a few kilos as she's enjoyed the fried char kway teows and all the good stuff. Maybe also been very busy with the kids, as we all understand. And so focusing on her body and her health maybe has not been at the priority or at the forefront of it because she's been so busy in other things. So because she's packed on a couple of kilos, now she's coming back to her high school 25-year reunion, and it's coming up in 12 months' time, and she needs to lose 10 to 15 kilos in this time. What advice can you give Lucy?
Okay. So here are a couple things I'm going to assume about Lucy before I give the answer to this, okay? And if you fall within this category, it's probably, this answer is probably going to apply to you. So I'm going to assume that Lucy, she has packed on not just a few pounds, but 10 to 15 kilos. So that's a substantial amount of weight. And if you've packed on that amount of weight, in a long term, because you neglected your health, likely a lot of that is just going to be tons of fat. So in other words, this is a very roundabout way of saying that Lucy has a lot of fat to lose, right?
Yep.
And usually where we help people decide, like, should weight loss be the main thing that they should be focusing on, or is it fat loss? Because there's a difference between the two, and maybe we can dive into that in another episode. But just very briefly, like, losing weight doesn't always mean you're losing fat. But if you are over fat, if you are 10, 15 kilos above where your previous weight is, there's a high chance you have a lot of fat stored up on your body that can act as a buffer that you can lose quite easily. Quite easily, in the sense that if you are losing weight, you lose this fat. Okay, so that's the premise we're starting from here. That Lucy has a ton of this fat to lose, and she is has a tight timeline by which to do so. So in this case, if you're talking about it from the perspective of workouts, the priority from this starting point is actually to probably just do a lot more cardio based workouts, just because that will help improve the general fitness, the cardiovascular fitness. It will also have the double benefit of being a little bit more efficient at burning calories. And then, like, that's to maximize the exercise component in that sense. Okay, but I know, and some people are listening to this might be thinking, oh, but I was told I need to lift weights, I need to do all this kind of stuff, and blah, 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 right? So I want to caveat that as well and say that at the end of the day, this is still, while it's more effective to do cardio to lose weight, to lose fat, it is still very inefficient. And the large primary driver of her fat loss is still going to be from the diet. So if you are in this stage, you definitely want to focus a lot on your diet. And whatever little time you have to exercise, you probably want to do some sort of cardio, okay, if you're really working towards this deadline. Yeah, so that's my first answer to this. But in terms of what other workout types, right, that she could explore, like what's the purpose of doing the weights and all that sort of stuff?
Sorry, before we jump onto that, what kind of cardio should she be focused on, considering she's a bit heavy set?
Yes. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. So the type of cardio she should be doing is just any kind of relatively low intensity cardio. I would say anything that, especially if you're more heavy set, anything that is not too impactful on the joints of your lower body. So maybe an elliptical machine, even walking uphill on a treadmill might be also a decent option. Depending how you walk though, if you find you're landing very heavily on your feet, you might want to just, not do that instead. So riding a bike as well is also a good option. Swimming is probably a good option as well. Yeah, but I don't know very many people that are overweight that actually would prefer swimming, to be honest. Yeah, so I think most of the time it's either elliptical or bike. Like in my experience, that's what most people choose. And
Okay.
elliptical seems to be the overall winner in that sense, just because it's very, very comfortable on the joints, and you end up and you just end up like if you hold the handles as well and you push them, back and forth as you're doing it, you kind of also work the upper body to some degree. You're bringing the upper body through that rotational movements as well.
Hmm.
So it's a great way to really get started with the fitness journey and the exercise. And then once they have lost, a decent amount of the fat, you can start to implement in more of the weight training components as well. So if you want to do it more by a stepwise process like this, especially if you have very little time, you only have enough mental bandwidth to focus on one thing at a time, this probably is the best way to go about it.
Okay. Would you go high intensity or would you go steady state or?
I definitely would recommend steady state, but at a moderate intensity. So uh kind of go around what people would consider a zone three kind of thing. So it's just slightly effortful, like starting to get effortful, but it's not quite like maximum effort. Okay. And the reason why you want to be around that zone three is because you want to maximize that. It's the best way to kind of like maximize that time frame that you have to do the cardio, to get like the most stimulative effect from it. But it's also not so high that you'll feel very, very tired out from it. Like you'll recover from it pretty easily still. If you start to go into zone 4 or zone 5, where it's really maximal efforts, then you start to build up a disproportionate amount of fatigue, and you don't get that much more in terms of the like calorie burn, and you get some stronger stimulus, yes, but like the disproportionate amount of fatigue, especially considering all the other aspects of life, the stress and all that.
Yeah.
The technical term for that is allostatic load, right? Which is everything else around you that stresses you out on the body. Considering all that, it's probably going to lead to more burnout than anything. Yeah. So that's what I would suggest, to be honest. I would love for everybody to lift weights, but I think realistically speaking, in my experience, not everybody can handle both lifting weights and losing and like doing cardio and doing dieting all at the same time at the start.
Hmm.
If you're in the space to do that, then definitely follow more of the answer I gave in the previous for the previous avatar. I think that will already be a great starting point. Just that maybe you do a bit more cardio just to emphasize a bit more of that fat loss component first. But after that, at least when you transition to doing more weight training, it will be an easier transition.
Okay. So in a 12-year period, well, 12 yet, in a 12-month period, I do the cardio. When do I start looking to transition into the weight training?
Again, this is just coming from my experience. For people that have quite a lot of fat to lose, you could start out. I would say it's a bit hard to answer this with a very definite answer, and you can see my struggle here to answer with a definite answer,
Hmm.
because there really is a huge range, and everybody's so different. But most of the time, let's say like 3 months into it, if you keep up with it and you watch your diet and you do enough cardio, you probably will lose a substantial amount of weight. Okay. And around that 3 month mark, the 12-week mark, you probably will feel so much better, move much better, feel more energetic, that you could start to take on and tackle the idea of doing more weight training really. So that's kind of that threshold point I've observed. Some people are shorter than that, some people are, beyond that a little bit, takes a bit longer. But yeah, that's a good, I guess, a benchmark, or not even a benchmark really, but just like an expectation that you can have. And if you do way better than that, then by all means, jump into weights earlier. I'm always for weights, but if you do a bit later than that, don't fret. It just means maybe you're just working with what your timeline is and what your background and your overall situation is.
Okay. And then the resistance workout that you'll be doing is very similar to the advice that you gave for Harry the health guy, right?
Yes, for sure. For sure. You don't need to do anything too fancy. In fact, in terms of like specific workouts, I might actually recommend going into a gym and doing all the machines. Okay. And the reason why is because machines are pretty much idiot proof. Just look at the machine, see what the figure there shows. Or if you want to shortcut the process, just get a personal trainer to take you through, a couple of sessions of the different machines so that you know how to use them. And then just use the machines and try to get stronger at those. because the machines put you in a very safe position to allow you to kind of just focus on lifting the weight, and then you pretty much will hit the correct muscles more or less. And that way it makes it much easier for you to make progress. Okay. While there's a lot of benefit to be had to do, to go with free weights, to go and do body weight stuff as well. The reality is that somebody that's a bit more overweight, body weight stuff is going to be a challenge for the most part. Okay. And you need to learn and put in a bit more like dedicate a bit more mental bandwidth to really learning how to move your body well in order to maximize the body weight exercises, especially if you're on the heavier side. Then if you talk about doing dumbbells and free weights, that also requires some understanding of general basic movement patterns and things like this, which, by the way, if you lose weight, it kind of changes also. Like the way you move, the way you squat down, how you feel, the movements actually feel different when you're heavier versus when you're lighter. When you actually physically are smaller from losing the fat. And so, you don't really want to like have to struggle with all that again, because I'm just talking about it from that load perspective, right? Mental load perspective. You have to figure out how to lift weights. You have to figure out, the time and dedicate the time to go and do the cardio. Then you have to figure out how to do your diet, right? Like if you're just trying to lose the fat, get your cardio in, work your heart, make sure that you focus on your diet, because that's the thing that's going to drive your weight loss down. And then you can introduce the weights in when you're in a better space to be able to actually do it. So that's what I would suggest for most people. It's not the most satisfying answer, to be honest. I think for a lot of people listening, but it is the most practical one, I would say.
No, it makes sense to me because you don't want to introduce too many complicated things. As you said, you don't want to introduce too many complicated things at one go. So the very first thing to focus on is diet. And then you complement that with some movement. And the movement is just going out and doing some walking, doing some elliptical training, like you said, because it's all low. Yeah, it's not so heavy on the joints.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, that's just mentioning that about focusing on the diet. That's the reason why we do like a nutrition program at our Fit for Life stuff, because a lot of times there are people that just don't have the time to exercise. So we just we just say, okay, never mind, because right now, based on where you're at and based on the health urgency that you have, we actually just need to focus on reducing your weight first. Because whatever weight you lose at this point is likely going to be a high, like if not 100%, right? Like just a large majority of that's going to be your like body fat. So you can actually focus on this part first until you get into a healthier range and you feel better. And then we can introduce in the weights when you feel like suddenly you unlock a lot more mental bandwidth. Because the reality is that when you're overweight and you're more heavy than you need to be, mentally it's actually very draining as well. So you actually have a lower kind of mental bandwidth and the mental capacity in a sense to deal with a lot of things. And your productivity is down, energy is not feeling great, all these kind of nasty stuff, right? So once you can get rid of that, you actually expand up your ability to handle a lot more things. And so that's kind of that virtuous cycle of starting with the weight loss first, hyper focusing into it, using nutrition to bring it down, and then after that, introducing all these other elements step by step.
Okay. All right, awesome. I think it's time to move on to the next one.
Yes.
So coming up in behind door number 3, we have Bob the Builder.
Bob the Builder, yes.
And I'm sure everybody knows what Bob the Builder wants. Bob the Builder wants to build big muscles. He watched the documentary on Arnold Schwarzenegger over the weekend on Netflix, and he has decided that he wants to now unseat Arnold as the face of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
What can you advise Bob?
Oh man, this one's simple. This is the easiest one. I mean, pretty much just get into the gym and start doing bodybuilding style training,
How would you define bodybuilding style training?
Yeah, so this is going to be an emphasis on training the muscles, okay? Training the muscles and overloading the muscles of the body. And then making sure you are just trying to stimulate you're just trying to stimulate the muscles when you're doing the exercises. If that makes sense. Now, the difference here I'm making is that whereas for somebody that wants to get stronger, the whole point is to move a lot of weight. Whereas if you do more bodybuilding, you actually want to move the most amount of weight with the caveat that you're doing so with the target muscles you're trying to use. And so to simplify that, again, it's just going into more of like a bodybuilding style training where you focus on like setting up your workout such that on some days, right, maybe you train like the upper body, some days you train like the lower body, and then within that session you are training, you know, all various muscles with a variety of machines, a variety of like some of the dumbbell, barbell exercises, yeah, and then just getting like a good pump, you know, overloading and getting stronger at all these movements, and then yeah, just making sure you eat enough, you know, from there. So pretty much the bodybuilding style training is pretty much the most simple, I would say, recommendation I can make. Where it gets hard for a lot of people is actually choosing what is the split that they do, you know, like choosing what is the program they're going to follow. And I can tell you, if you're just a beginner, you probably don't have to agonize over that too much. This just choose like maybe a 3 to 4 day kind of split where you are working all the muscles twice in the week. So it might be something like upper body and lower body 2 times a week. And then that's kind of where you would kind of start. Does it make sense?
Hmm. When you're looking at bodybuilding, this one is obviously a big difference with regards to volume, right? When you're comparing
Yes.
it to the two previous personas.
Yes, for sure. For sure. The volume that you want to do for the muscles would definitely be a bit higher, just because you need to give your muscles enough of a stimulus to actually adapt. And the funny thing is that when you start to do something that's like more bodybuilding style training, for a lot of people, especially as a beginner, you might end up feeling a lot more sore in the first week, maybe even more sore than you really need to. But if that's the path you want to kind of go down, that's probably
You get used
fine.
to it.
Like you probably will be in that mental state of like, okay, cool, this is part of the process. You know, like you wouldn't really be running away from the DOMs. You'd be laughing about the DOMs together with your friends. I mean, it still sucks, right? It hurts in
Yeah.
a sense, but it's a good hurt, you know. So if you're on that perspective of like, I want to get as jacked as possible, you already have that pre-mental state or acceptance of how challenging it might be. So your tolerance for difficulty might be slightly higher than, let's say, the person that just wants to get fit or just wants general health, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of going from that premise, because that's what I observe most of the time. Are there exceptions? There are exceptions. Where some people tell me they want to build, you know, they want to build muscle, they want to kind of look like, you know, this cover model or that cover model, and I tell them, oh man, you know, like you gotta really start training a lot more. You gotta do all that, and then it really hits them where the reality is like, oh no, if I want to look like this, I really have to prioritize it. Because at the end of the day, if you're asking this question about how can I build more muscle and like kind of get stronger, chances are you're in a position where you're not as strong or as big as you like to be. And that will also mean that your genetics are not naturally, you know, really, really good. So you do
Mm.
need to maximize whatever you do in the gym. And training needs to be like challenging enough to make sure that your body has a reason to change. Yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah,
the other thing
I
is,
think that's pretty much
yeah,
it. Yeah.
is it fair to say that, you know, like with Lucy, losing
Yes.
weight, the
Yeah.
very first primary thing that you say is, okay, focus on diet, right? Because diet is going to play the biggest
Yes.
part with regards to
Yes.
your weight loss.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say similar thing to Bob? You know, you also need to place high priority on your diet in order to build the muscle. If you're,
Yeah.
uh, mm,
Yeah. You do need to place a high priority on the diet, but in a different way from Lucy, I would say. Like there are some differences in focus you would have. Because if you're looking to build muscle, pretty much on the diet front, you just need to make sure, number one, you're getting enough protein in. So what's enough, right? A lot of the current research would suggest to you maybe about 1.8 grams per kilo. So 1.8 grams of protein per kilo, right? Up to 2.2 grams of protein per kilo. I usually follow the 2.2 grams one because that's like 1 gram per pound. And that's like top end of the range. It means that you are well covered, you know, you cover all your bases. You don't actually have to go up to that high. 1.8 grams per kilo is probably good enough. So let's say if you're 100 kilos, that means 180 grams of protein. If you're 50 kilos, that would be 90 grams of protein, right? So is it 90 grams? 180, 90 grams. Yeah, so it should be 90 grams. So yeah, you just need to make sure you get enough protein. And if you're eating like 2 meals a day, and each of the meals you emphasize, your protein portions, you're getting like a chicken chop with each meal, or a big piece of fish that's about the size of your hand, or the size of your two hands, something like this, then you're probably getting a decent amount of protein already, and topping that up with maybe an extra protein shake would be enough for you to more or less hit the goals. And then after that, it's just making sure you eat enough for you to be able to gain weight. Because if you want to gain muscle, the muscle needs to come from somewhere. It needs the raw materials to be built up. And so you need to provide it with enough food. I think the biggest issue for a lot of people when they try to build muscle is that they're not eating enough to allow their body to actually build the muscle. And because of that, they can train really, really hard, but they are not getting the results that they want. But the training, if you want to build muscle, the training actually, I would say, supersedes the diet slightly. Because if you are eating a lot and you're taking all your dietary factors, but you're not training hard enough, again, the stimulus is not there to build muscle, you're just going to end up getting fat. Yeah. Both like building muscle is tough. Okay. Let's put it out there for everybody. Building muscle is tough. Your body does not want to build muscle because it makes your body more expensive for it to survive. Basically, you burn more calories. It's a very labor intensive thing for the body to kind of build new tissue over what it's used to just replacing on a day-to-day basis. So your body does not want to do that. So you have to do like there's a lot more factors you need to tick off in order to build the muscle. Okay, so if you are getting bigger, okay, and you are doing training, but you find that you're not only getting bigger, but you're just getting like fatter, you're not getting substantially stronger in the gym, you're not progressing a lot, then chances are you're just putting a lot of fat. You're not really putting on more muscle. Yeah. And if that's the case, you probably want to stop and say, like, okay, am I training hard enough? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we move on to
The last one?
the last one? So behind
Yeah.
door number 4, we have Sam. So
Okay.
Sam just recently watched Game of Thrones. I don't know if you all remember Game of Thrones, but he just recently watched Game of Thrones, and there was this dude that came out who apparently was called the Mountain. And he could like crush people's skulls with just his hand. And so Sam is like taken by this. Not that he wants to go crush people's skulls, but that strength, he just wants that strength component.
Yeah.
But the caveat is, and this is the big thing, is he's never been keen on being a big size guy, but he wants the strength of a big size guy. What can you tell Sam?
Yeah, so this comes into the realm, or this starts to go into the realm of like separating the difference between hypertrophy training and like strength training, right? So training for size and putting on a lot more muscle, which we just talked about, that was more towards hypertrophy training, and talking about training for strength. And training for strength is about like how can I move the most amount of weight in the specific thing that specific movement I'm trying to do. There are a few strength sport disciplines. One is powerlifting, right? The other one is like Olympic lifting. Another one is strongman. So the difference between all these strength sport disciplines is that powerlifting it's probably the easiest or the simplest in terms of the lifts that you do, because it's a basic squat, it's a basic bench, it's a basic deadlift. So it's actually the literal exercises that most people will do anyway in the gym when you're starting out, as a way to develop yourself or develop your strength. Then Olympic lifting is a much more complicated piece, because you have a very high coordination requirement kind of movement. You have the clean and jerk, where you take the bar from the floor, bring it up to your shoulders, and then from the shoulders you put it up overhead. So that's a clean and jerk. And then you have the snatch, which is you take it from the floor straight away up to overhead. So that's already its own thing. And weightlifting training is crazy, like the amount of technique development that they have to do in terms of like making sure they get their movements right, and everything is just so crazy. And then they have a strength component to training up the strength to be able to do all that. And so that's really fun. And then you have strongman, and strongman is kind of like the beast of the jungle kind of deal, right? Which is like it's the most functional out of everything. If I were to use that word very loosely, when I say functional, I mean like for daily life, if you want to have a baseline level of strength that can get you out of any situation, strongman is probably the way to go. And which is what's our avatar Sam here is kind of looking for. And strongman is really a lot of cases where you do a lot of exercises where you just basically lift really heavy weights and try to do something with it. So they have this division in the strongman where it's like, okay, they talk about, sorry, the subcategories in the competition where it's like static lifts, where they're just like more traditional towards just lifting the weight in a fixed position. Example, like I'm pushing something overhead. I'm lifting something off the floor, I'm deadlifting something off the floor, I'm also squatting. So they have that bit more traditional weightlifting in a sense. But they also have a lot of unconventional kind of categories, which is load and carries, where they have to like carry something super heavy and keep moving with it or bring it somewhere. Or like Atlas stones, I'm sure you've seen those big circular stones where they carry it out and put it onto a podium, a little pedestal. Yeah, and they have all these kind of categories where they're supposed to do crazy things like truck pulls, right? Where they harness themselves up to a fire truck and they pull there. Or if you've seen the old World's Strongest Man, they harness themselves up to like a Boeing jet and they pull themselves, And so there's all this kind of crazy stuff that they do, which I think is the most functional because at the end of the day, right? A strong man is like all rounded. You're super strong, such that and you have enough conditioning to be able to do things where you have to carry things and move them and lift them up overhead and do all that kind of stuff. So the reason why I was explaining all this stuff is because when you're training for strength, there are actually a lot of these kind of subcategories, and you kind of have to understand like which version of the strength are you trying to develop. So the most rudimentary version will be the powerlifting style, which is like kind of moving a lot of weight in the squat, right? I put the bar on my back, I'm going down, I'm standing up, and then you do deadlifts where I'm lifting a lot of weight from the floor, and you do bench where I'm able to push something off my chest, that's really heavy. So that's like the most rudimentary variation. And then you get something that's a bit more complicated, or a lot more complicated rather, like weightlifting, where now you have the bar from the floor and you have to either put it overhead in two ways. And then you have the strongman where it's like, okay, you're very strong in doing like squat, bench, and deadlift, but how do you translate that over into all these kind of things that we are asking you to do? And so even their static lifts aren't the usual barbell that they use, right? They do all sorts of weird stuff. Like static lift could be the circus dumbbell, or the Thompson dumbbell, and then they bring it up. It's this huge ass looking, comically large dumbbell where they bring up to the shoulders with one hand, and then they push it up overhead. So they can have that as a static lift as well. You could have static lifts where it's like the log press, right? They bring up the log to the shoulders and they try to push the log overhead. You even have those uneven lifts where it's like they grab a rock, like a weird ass rock that's heavy and dense, and just trying to figure out how to bring up the shoulders and push it overhead.
That is
So
the deadlifting of cars.
this deadlifting of cars, they do that, the car lift. There's I've seen some of those like Indian strongman, those videos where they are like lifting up the motorbikes and pushing them overhead or something. So it's nuts, man. Like it's such a fun time in that sense. But anyway, to answer the question, right, for Sam, what kind of training should he do? Well, he should first of all try to see like, okay, what does he really want to achieve? Like, what does he want to get really strong at? Because again, strength, while it is broadly understood what it means, it also needs to be quite specific into what you're trying to train towards. So is he just trying to get like overall maximally strong in maybe the squat, bench, and deadlift? Because that already has a huge carryover to daily life. If you get really strong at being able to squat and bench and deadlift, like regular life is going to be easy. Doing anything in regular life is going to be easy. You want to move house, you want to carry a couch, you probably can do it on your own already, So that's probably something he can do. But let's say if he wants to do something that has a bit more variety, a bit more odd stuff in there, I would say introducing some sort of strongman style workouts would be really cool. And there's so many different things that, again, you could do. But also the nature of the strongman equipment is also quite specialized. So you probably need to find a gym where they have that kind of strongman equipment. And this is where I also want to give a shout out to my friend Jeremy, and his team, he owns this gym in Singapore called Arc Block. So if you are listening from Singapore, this is a place you can go to. Yeah, it's called Arc Block, ARCBLOC. They have tons of strongman related equipment there, as well as like a fully equipped out gym, including a rock wall and everything. So it's really massive, and it attracts a lot of interdisciplinary people. They go there to train, you know, from bodybuilders to regular strongmen to like powerlifters and then rock climbing enthusiasts. So it's a whole hodgepodge of people. CrossFitters go there to train as well, and it's fun. You know, it's very fun. Whenever I'm in Singapore, I try to make a trip down. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so you would say then is for Sam, first thing to do is determine what kind of strength are you actually looking to
Yes.
improve upon.
Yeah.
Once you can determine what kind of strength you're looking to improve upon, then you can more accurately apply whatever training regime or program to maximize the goals there. So if it is just a general strength, you would say is like, okay, let's focus on maybe some powerlifting because you're getting the big three and they sort of encompass everything. But if you're looking for more than that, you would more than likely lean towards the strongman training.
Yes, to a large degree. But I would say practically for a lot of people, it might just end up looking something like they do a lot more of like the powerlifting style training, but instead of doing a ton of like bodybuilding stuff, they might just add in a few more strongman related kind of activities. So I'll give you some examples. Maybe farmers walks with heavy dumbbells. You know, just carrying a bunch of heavy dumbbells and just walking around with them for a long time. They might do that's like you know, heavy sandbag like lifts where if they have those really big bags, right? I'm not sure if the gym has a sandbag, but if they do, you can use that. But I see a lot of gyms have these little like Bulgarian bags and stuff like this. Some of them go up to like 50 kilos. You know, you could grab those and just try to lift them over your shoulder and toss them behind you. If your gym has like a sled, even better, you could do sled pushes, sled pulls, you know, things like this. They kind of mimic a lot of these so like more functional movements in a sense, where you're pushing or moving a certain weight over a longer, more dynamic in a more dynamic way over distance or over yeah, like trying to move it from one place to another versus something that's so static like a squat, a bench, a deadlift where you're up and down only.
Okay. So if we're looking at these four, right, these four personas, they've come, they chatted to you. What advice would you give to any of them if they have any type of pre-existing condition before attempting any of these exercises?
Well, I mean, the standard one is always to tell them, hey, please get clearance from your doctor before you begin.
And I think it's good that we get that out there on this podcast.
Okay, wait. But in all seriousness though, when you talk about pre-existing health conditions, what exactly do you mean? You know, maybe we should specify that.
Okay, so there could be a multitude because there are so many, right?
Yeah.
Let's say there's one that has high blood pressure.
Okay.
Which I assume Lucy might have. Let's generalize here. So Lucy might have high blood pressure. Lucy might have high cholesterol. Lucy might have any of these that are usually associated with heavier set people.
To be honest, even some of these health conditions are not necessarily only limited to heavy set people. I would say that I've seen people, and I've seen quite a number of people actually, a decent significant percentage where they are by all metrics within a so-called healthy BMI range, but because their body composition is very poor, they actually don't have much muscle and they have a lot more fat on them. Their health markers are just as bad, you know. So just talking about from this pre-existing health markers itself, I would say honestly, most of these exercise that I mentioned can easily be done still. The only thing is you want to take note of how much you're pushing yourself, your exertion, and especially if you're something like high blood pressure, you know, you might want to take it a bit easier at the start in that sense. Where again, remember my golden rule at the start was you start off a bit lesser than what you think you could do, and then you add on from there and slowly start to push and explore that boundary and your limits. Yeah. At the end of the day, here's the deal, right? Most people want to get the results right now. And the reality is that your body needs time to change, especially if your body took time to kind of get out of shape. You need time to get back in shape. And you cannot rush your body's adaptation. You can do a lot. You can get a lot done, but beyond a certain point, doing more does not make your body change faster. So you have to respect that component and be like, okay, cool. I need to work hard, but I also need to just work hard enough. And usually that's kind of where, okay, like having a coach comes in, for someone to tell you like, are you on track? Are you not on track? To ask you all these questions that I'm asking, you notice a lot of my answers are so pre-framed, right? They are all prefaced by a lot of caveats here and there, because you have to understand, like, individually, each of you that are listening to this will have your own journey, you have your own issues, have your own preferences, your schedules, your lifestyles, whatever it is. And that definitely informs the way you kind of go about doing things. But if I want to simplify it completely though, I would say dip your toe in, just go ahead and do the workouts, according to what I mentioned earlier. Try those out and just start on the slightly more conservative end. Don't try to run yourself into the ground every single time. Just establish a benchmark when you start out, and then try to just keep improving on that. So let's say today you did 10 kilos for dumbbell weight for whatever exercise it is. Okay, let's say shoulder press, you did 10 kilos. Next week, maybe you can stick with 10 kilos, but try to do a few more reps. And if you do that and you feel like, hey, last week I got 8 reps, this week I got 10 reps, cool, I'm getting stronger. The next week you can maybe perhaps try the 12 kilos then. So just kind of small little stepwise improvements over time is what you want. Because at the end of the day, your body needs time to change. And so I think respecting that component of it really, really helps.
Okay. Sound advice. I think we have time for one final question.
Oh, yeah.
And this question is, are there any specific fitness trends that you recommend or maybe advise caution against for people over the age of 40?
Yeah, I would say that recently we have seen an uptick in people trying to get like blood glucose monitors, into the mainstream. And I think that's super useless because blood glucose monitors are pretty much only for diabetic use. Like the only people that will really, really need a glucose monitor is somebody that's a type 1 diabetic. Because for a type 1 diabetic, if you happen to go, hyper or hypoglycemic, then you will need to really address that, right? Type 1 diabetic can't make insulin on their own. And so because of that, they need to monitor their blood glucose levels to make sure they're within a certain range that doesn't lead to further complications. Even a type 2 diabetic probably doesn't need a glucose monitor, because a type 2 diabetic's issue is not that they can't produce insulin, it's just that they have taxed their body to the stage where insulin production becomes almost muted. So it's a case of just reversing that. And although I say just, obviously it's it encompasses a whole bunch of stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, losing weight, dropping fat, and all that sort of stuff is going to help your insulin sensitivity and going to improve the blood glucose anyway. So there's no additional data that tracking your glucose actually gives you that is beneficial. So that's kind of the thing about it, it's very cool because it makes people feel like, oh wow, I'm monitoring something. But the question is, like, you might monitor your blood glucose, but what are you actually trying to find? Right? Because if you monitor your blood glucose, let's say you eat a meal and your blood glucose goes up, then okay, cool, that's exactly how it's supposed to work, because insulin needs to come in to shuttle the nutrients out of your body, right? And then fall back down. If you already have an elevated level of blood glucose, then you already know your issue, especially your type 2 diabetic, or maybe your pre-type 2 diabetic. You might need to address is then to make sure that, okay, I need to bring that down, right? I need to monitor my diet a little bit more. I need to lose some fat. I need to maybe improve my improve the nutrient sensitivity of my body through making sure I do some sort of resistance training. You already know what you need to do. Like, knowing what your blood glucose is doesn't give you any measurable benefit on a day-to-day basis. Only at your checkups where you take your fasting blood glucose and you're like, okay, cool, it's coming down.
I think for myself is this kind of things requires a fair amount of education,
Yes.
but then you also need to know how to apply that education. And
Yeah.
then with that application, there are also nuances that come into play. And usually, and myself included in this, in many instances, is we are like TikTok educated. We we watched 5 videos on TikTok, and so we are now experts in it, and we know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
But you have healthcare professionals that have studied for X amount of years in order to read and apply it to every person's individual uh, journey or case.
Yeah.
They know what to look at. They know why, how, and what could be a cause and how to overcome that, rather than us just saying, "Oh, this spiked my glucose, so it's wrong."
Yeah. That's such a, like, anybody who tells you that, or or tells you that, hey, if your glucose spikes, so if your insulin spikes, or your glucose spikes up, and there's something wrong, that really doesn't know what they're talking about. And you'll be surprised also, even medical professionals themselves do not necessarily give the right advice as well. In that sense, because medical professionals, just like any other industry, there's so many different subcategories. So in fact, I talk to a lot of some of my clients are medical professionals, right? Either nurses or or doctors, or even like high level people that are like neurosurgeons. I used to have one client that's a neurosurgeon, right? Talk to anything about the brain. Yeah. I learned so much from him about the brain. But nutrition, the guy sucks. He doesn't know anything beyond like the elementary nutritional module that they do at medical school. So that's not their forte, right? Like we all learn how to stay within our lane. I'm not going to advise somebody with neuromuscular issues, right? Anything about their brain, because that's not my field. Yeah, he has to go to the neurologist, and then we work with them and say, okay, cool. On the exercise front, what can we do? But we always go back to the expert on that particular thing. Yeah, so I think you're totally right. Like TikTok educated. That's the first time I heard that term actually. TikTok educated.
Maybe I should coin it,
I'm gonna use that from now on. Yeah.
trademark it.
Yeah, you should trademark it. So but yeah, I think that's one trend that I think is not great. Don't waste your money on a glucose monitor if you are, yeah, if you don't need it.
Mhm.
So the people who don't the only people who need it are probably, again, like I told you, type 1 diabetics. Maybe some type 2 diabetics if your doctor suggests for you to do that, and you're at the stage where you really need to monitor because you're getting those kind of like what do you call it, hyperglycemic kind of issues kind of coming in.
Yep.
And symptoms coming in. So then, yeah, maybe you need to monitor that. Yeah, but fundamentally, it doesn't change what you need to do, right? Your diet needs to be monitored. You need to still eat well, like more whole foods, get your fiber in, make sure you're not overeating, lose some weight, increase your exercise component, make sure you're doing more resistance training, because resistance training, increasingly in the research as well, it's one of the things that people are actually recommending to all the diabetics. Because when you do weights and when you train the muscles and you stress them out, the muscles themselves they actually become very sensitive to the nutrients. And so they reduce the requirement for insulin, or they reduce the loading effort for insulin to kind of bring it in. That means like it can receive the nutrients in
Yeah.
in the absence of insulin. So it's really good for diabetics who cannot produce, like type 1 diabetics who can't, produce their own insulin, and they need
Yep.
to inject it, right, extraneously.
Mm.
And so yeah, they just train more weights. Their muscles are more sensitive. They can actually eat a bit more, like possibly even a bit of sugary stuff here and there, and it would be able to go into the muscle cells where it needs to be.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, it's that, right? You look
Sorry,
like you have
I
a
had a
thought in your.
thought, but it's past. I really need to work on my oxygen levels, it seems. There's
I don't know.
something I had and then it's just fleeted away.
Yeah,
All right, anyways, I
you
think
you
that
did
is
legs
it.
today. You did legs today, so we can forget that.
Note to self, next recording date, no leg day.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
think that's it. I think that's where we can wrap it, right?
Right. I think we did. I think we covered pretty much everything. So for those who have found this interesting, do give it a share with your friends and family. let them hear what you've just heard and see if they agree with what we have to say. And
Yeah,
if you do, give us a follow. I heard that the actual thing is follows, so we have followers.
yes.
So let's
Give us a
increase the
follow.
follower count on our Spotify. We will appreciate that. And other than that, any closing, Twain?
No, man. Just make sure to give us a follow. I mean, like, we really do appreciate that. But okay, I mean, if you found this useful and you like all these episodes that we do, yeah, and please reach out if you have any questions, anything that we talked about that you have a question on, you want something clarified, hey, feel free to reach out. It's always impossible to cover all bases when we talk like this. So yeah, we're always open to discussion and stuff.
Yes, and like you pointed out in the last episode, it's a good time to reach out right now, because we are still starting out. We're still open
Oh yeah.
to following up and answering your questions in an actual episode on itself. So yeah, do give us a follow, give us a shout out, and give us a share.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike.
Fantastic. All
And
right,
thanks
then we'll see you
everybody
all in the next one.
thanks everybody for listening to it all this way.
All right, see ya.